I'm on a journey to get better, and I want to do it with you. And I'm not just focusing on physical health. I'm focusing on everything: emotional wellness, spirituality, finances, relationships, and so much more. Every week, it will be my personal goal to bring us, the world's leading healers, experts, and game changers, to share groundbreaking secrets and tips to getting better in all areas of life. Getting better isn't easy, but it's a whole lot easier when we can do it together. Welcome to Better Together with me, Maria Menounos. Steven's making us raise the roof in here. Welcome back to Better Together with Maria Menounos. That's me, yo. Got Scam Sabra, Miss Steph Sabra, and the co-host seat.
Pleasure to be here.
Stephen Lemieux in the booth.
Hello, hello.
Were you raising the roof, or were you just making us do it?
You'll never know.
Oh, this is true. Okay. Yeah, of course you were. Welcome back, guys. Happy Monday. Glad you guys are back with us. We have an amazing show for you today. Steph found another gem. I'm so excited about this book, Range, by David Epstein. It talks about why generalists have an edge over specialists. And so if you are out there and you have felt lesser because you haven't found your niche yet, finding a niche isn't as great as you think it is. And we're going to get into that.
Totally. I all my friends are like, I have too many interests. And then this, I think, is kind of...
It's validating.
Yeah. I saw an interview with him where someone was saying, like, you made me feel better about myself. It was like a self-help book, too, at the same time.
Yeah. I felt better about myself, too, because there are so many people along the way, like I said in the interview, that try to tell me to focus on one thing. And I will say I am happier in the moments in my life when I get to just focus on one thing. But that's the difference between multitasking and focus.
Yeah.
It's a different thing, which I think we should do an episode on as well.
Absolutely.
Because multitasking became such a hot thing, and it's like, oh my God, I'm an amazing multitasker. And really, you're doing a bunch of things shitty.
100%.
Or like one thing gets done great and the other things are not as good. And it's not easy to really multitask. And I've realized that's what I dislike. I really like being able to hone in on something, whether it's a project or whatever. Whereas before I would do a billion things and I just wasn't really present in any of them. Mm-hmm. I was always advancing in my mind to what do I need to get to prepare for the next thing. So that's a different argument. What this is talking about is acquiring different skills and having different hobbies, and finding your way is okay. You don't have to be Beyonce singing and dancing from, the moment they snip your umbilical cord to be amazing, right?
Yeah.
There are certain people like a Beyonce or like
Tiger Woods
that just are gifted and unbelievable and have heard their calling earlier.
But also the distinction of what positions call for something that needs like the replicated behavior and patterns, and then most of ours, like if you're a host or an actress or whatever it may be, it's not. You're pulling from experiences and different sort of tactics. Like I used to always, and we'll get into it more after the interview, but I used to be scared, like, did I start hosting too late? And this book validated, like, no, there's a reason why I can bring in politics and I can bring in law and all these different things, because I didn't start when I was 15.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, Scam. And you have AfterBuzz.
Yeah.
What?
Where you can just test everything.
And we are here at AfterBuzz TV yet again in our other studios, our main studios, because Kevin's still working on our studio, and we went to Michael's, you and I.
Yes.
And we started figuring out how we're going to decorate that studio.
Progress.
And it's looking really good. Wait till you see. So these tall light thingies, I don't know what to call them. What do you call these tall things, Stephen? Pillars, yes, these light up pillars. So he figured out a way with light bulbs inside to make it look like lemons.
Oh, what?
No, it's so cool. He's
That's
so
why
amazing.
He told me, he looked at me and he said, I'm going to take it from here.
Yeah.
I said, okay.
Yeah. Although he's so wiped out right now. We went to Vegas this weekend. So back up. Kevin and I have been going to Summer League. I thought since inception, and I had to remove that post because someone there who started Summer League said, you guys have been here since the first year. So I believed him, and I started doing the math and it made sense, but we went 2 years later. So we've been going, I think it was since 2004 to Summer League. And basically you go and you watch the new recruits, the new draft picks play and get to see what's, a peek into the new season. And we're nerds, and so we love going. And so we've gone, throughout the years. And this year, when I looked at the schedule, I couldn't figure out a way to get there because we were too busy. And so we'd DVR the games, and we'd watch them at different times when it was, possible. And then this past weekend, I think it was on Friday, I texted the assistant GM and I said, I'm so sad that we're not there, but here's my recruit report. I love Taco Fall. I love, the Williamses and whatever. I gave him my whole thing and Waters. And he's like, why aren't you here? And then I was just waking up when I got his text on Friday morning, because I texted him the night before. And I said, Kevin, wait, we're in the playoffs. I didn't expect us to make it this long. Look and see the schedule. And so we saw the schedule. It was Saturday. I'm like, we're going.
Oh my gosh.
So last minute we decided to go. And we decided to drive because we have a Tesla. And we thought it would be so fun. I love road trips. And we haven't done a road trip in a long time. So we road tripped out to Vegas in our Tesla SUV. And I remembered on the way having broken down years ago, and I believe it was on the way to a Summer League, in our little Mazda in Victorville, which is in the middle of nowhere,
yes.
And it's hot as F. And nobody would come pick us up. We were totally stranded. It was horrible. And now it's like, gosh, now we're traveling in our Tesla. It was kind of like a nice moment to reflect back
Totally. Yeah, you and Kev really started from the bottom together.
Started from the bottom,
now we're in the Tesla.
Wait, so you didn't break down?
No, we didn't break down.
I thought you were teeing up that this was going to break down.
Can you imagine? That
We'd
would not be good.
Call up Elon.
So here's the thing. What's so cool about the Tesla, I mean, we discovered lots of new things on the Tesla that we didn't know about before. When you're in a car for so many hours, you learn things. So there's this thing called Sentry mode that I had off, so I turned it on. Apparently, if someone comes to mess with the car, to damage it or anything, it has video cameras that will record Steph coming in, ruining my tires or smashing it or whatever.
It happened.
And it sounds alarms. And then it alerts you on your app that someone's messing with your car. Badass. Anyhow, the other thing that was cool is when you plug in the address, we've never gone that far away. So you get 220 miles on a charge. So we're never going 220 or more miles. So when you plug in Vegas, it actually calculates the route and calculates it with stops for power.
Wow.
So it's like, okay, you're going to stop in Bakersfield, and maybe it wasn't Bakersfield. Baker, and then, maybe Bakersfield was the other one. It was Baker and something else. I can't remember. Anyway, and it's like, you'll spend 25 minutes here. And so one of them was at the outlets. And so we stopped and we had snacks and we shopped a little, and then we went to the next one. It was such a beautiful ride there. Where we screwed up was at the Thomas Mack Arena where we watched the game, there was no charging and we were out of charge. So we're like, we'll go get dinner and charge. That charging station was packed. So we were really behind schedule. So poor Kevin had to drive for 6+ hours, 7 hours on the way home, just to get us home with all the charging stops and stuff.
Oh no.
Yeah. It was pretty
But was the game worth it?
Okay, now let's get to the game. The game was amazing. So we acquired, or he's on the Summer League team, and I'm pretty sure they'll sign him in some way, Taco Fall. So Taco is, I believe it's 7'6", right? I mean, he's almost 8 feet tall. His wingspan, I think, is definitely 8 feet. And people have been going crazy over him. Kevin and I, of course, especially. We've watched every game at home, and he's just insane because at that height, they're not supposed to be able to move that easily, right? And I've watched other tall guys in the NBA, and they're a little lanky, and they're goofy, and He's not. And he's done such a great job on the team. And so I had this idea from shirts that I had years ago. I had a shirt that said, let's taco about it, and with the taco. And so we went to the mall and we made up shirts that said, let's taco about it, with a Celtic shamrock on it. And we were like, definitely a sight at the game. I had shirts from me, Kevin, and our friend Joe.
I saw Summer League, the official Twitter account, posted a photo of you.
Yeah.
So cute.
It was so fun. And so it was funny because I noticed him on the court. He like looked at me, but like he didn't want to look like he was looking because he wanted to be focused on the game. And he's like somebody who studied astronomy. I mean, we have some really interesting guys this year. But anyhow, it was really cool. And so, and Brad Stevens and Mike, the assistant coach, sat with us, and we got to all share kind of what we were thinking and just fun stuff. They're great guys too. And so we're excited about the team. I hung out after to take a picture with Taco. It was so cute. I love him.
It is. It's like crazy to see the height difference.
And I was in heels.
Because Maria's tall. I don't think a lot of people realize how tall you are.
5'7" ¾
And then with heels, you're like almost 6 foot.
Yeah.
Depending on what heels you're
Or
wearing.
5'10"ish.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5'11". Well, it was pretty cool. And then I talked to Tremont Waters, is another amazing player that we signed. How about him? His dad took his life just like a day before I had seen him on the court.
No way.
Yeah, it was really, really sad. So I
that
DM'd
breaks
him
my
and I was
heart.
like, I'm so sorry. And what a great guy he is. And so anyway, I'm really excited about our new team. I'm like a psycho Celtics fan. I love our team. And it was a lot of fun. And the road trip was super fun too. And Kevin has always made it home. I think he had about 1,000 coffees that day because it's all in one day. We drove in and out. So it was almost like 11 hours of travel time between stops and the whole thing.
It's hard with those stops. But good bonding time with the hubs.
Good bonding time. Funny enough, actually, someone on Instagram was so mean. I don't know why people why say anything if you don't have anything nice to say anyway. This woman was like, I used to like you from Instagram, but then I saw you on Celebrity Family Feud and you were so weird with your husband and distant. And I'm like, what?
And distant?
Did you see me jump and straddle him and say that he was the smartest husband ever? Like, I don't know. It was so strange. But speaking of Celebrity Family Feud.
Oh, God.
We were on last night. If you haven't seen it, it will replay on Hulu this week, apparently. I had my cousins hand-selected this team very specifically. And we won $25,000 for the Cedars-Sinai Brain Trust. And we were so excited. We did it on behalf of my mom and everybody else out there who needs help in that department. And we had so much fun.
So cool. You were against Jeannie Mai's family, but you came out victorious.
It was anybody's game because we got the first round and then we had populated every answer and then we screwed up 3 times and then they stole the round. And I was like, oh man. And so they start to teach you that you can play or pass. And so we had an idea where we thought, well, maybe we pass the next time so that they can overpopulate everything and then we could just be sitting there thinking of the next answers. And then I was like, no, let's just play. And so it was so much fun. Everyone's giving me so much shit. And of course, Kevin's posting online about my cowboy answer because he said, name something a cowboy will always have no matter what. And I said, guitar. But what people don't understand is I said it because of the naked cowboy in Times Square. So
that makes sense.
That's where my brain went. But then also when he says, name a famous Simpson, and I said Bart, and my cousin had already said that, so I couldn't use it. And so then I went to Marge because I went to a family member. I should have said Jessica Simpson or O.J. Simpson.
Oh.
I barely made it through the fast money round. We were really lucky.
That's hard, though. to think on the spot like that.
It was so funny.
Especially when the stakes are up. But I'm so happy that you guys were able to do that with your mom and incorporate Dr. Black, who was past guest on Better Together.
Yeah.
And she has another successful MRI.
I know.
That's crazy.
I know. She's coming up on 3 years with glioblastoma this August. And she got her MRI last week, and the doctor said it looks even better than the last one. And it really is a miracle, like a miracle. Mm-hmm. And I now understand that feeling I had probably a few months into her diagnosis. I kept having this feeling, like overwhelming feeling, like she was going to be okay, that she didn't have this. Not that she was going to be okay, that she didn't have this. And I knew it wasn't me having an intuitive moment of misdiagnosis. I knew she definitely had this. So then I realized maybe it's because she's going to be okay. And so I believed in that. And we did a lot of hard work too.
A lot.
And continue to do a lot of hard work. I keep adjusting the plan with her. So I starved her of sugar for these 3 years. And there were periods in there where she didn't listen and she was rebellious. But this last 6 months, she's been super good because I told her I would buy her a Louis Vuitton bag. I go, I'll take you to Louis Vuitton, buy whatever you want. Please just don't eat sugar. And she's really stuck to it. And then someone we had on the podcast, actually, no, it wasn't the podcast. It was an event I went to for the brain. And they talked about how important glucose is to the brain. And I was like, shit, maybe I need to incorporate some fruit. So now my mom's having more fruit in her diet. So I think in the critical moments, like starving the sugar is good, but then you have to make that adjustment later. So then I lowered her marijuana dosage. She's back on it. And so I'm slowly upping it to a place where she'll be able to get a good night's rest and have it working on her tumor and the overall cancer. So it's like a lot of adjusting and a lot of work, but she's here.
So it's so amazing.
Yeah.
And that you're also in a place where you can give some time to that, because I know it's extremely time consuming.
Yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot.
So lucky.
But I feel really blessed. And so, yeah.
Good. I want to see her again. She's literally like your parents, even just the promo clips when I saw some commercials of them, like of your dad specifically playing the game, but behind the scenes with your mom, they're so freaking cute.
I know.
Like, how are they so cute?
I know. They really are. They really are. It's funny. They are special. So Dimitri came, by the way, if you're watching this video, you'll see I don't have my fun long red extensions in. We took them out because it was time to do new ones. And it reminded me, we were talking about different makeup artists. And I wanted to give this tip to you guys, because if you're watching Instagram nowadays, it looks like everyone's gotten an eye job, right? So all of a sudden everyone's eyes are like this.
Yeah.
Right? Or even like the Kendall Jenners are like this. And I don't know what she's done or hasn't done, but I was hearing from Dimitri that all these makeup artists won't even start people's faces until they've snatched their eyes. So don't assume that people are getting surgery. They might be doing interesting tactics. Now, Dimitri did it to me at the NBA game, NBA awards.
Yeah.
Like, so basically what you do is you go in here, and they've been doing this since like the 30s, and you take a little bit of hair, right? And then you take it back here, and then you take another piece over here. Shit, I gotta do it right. And then look.
And then you pin it?
And you tie it in the back of your head, and all of a sudden you've had an eyebrow lift.
Wait, what?
Do you see the difference?
Yes,
so now
I do, but
you can go like this. So you can pin them like this. Or you can pin it up. So if you ever see me and I look like I had an eyebrow lift, it's because I'm doing this. Because Dimitri, he's so funny. Like,
wow.
I want to wear flats, and he'll be like, no, my love, please, we must wear heels. It looks sexier. And I'm like, oh my God, he drives me nuts. So sometimes I'll let him like have fun with it. But it's a cool tip for people at home.
Yeah.
If you want to look refreshed or do like a fun eye, but like your eyes are a little droopier than they have been, you can do it.
My mom literally called me on the phone, or she was talking to me the other day. She's like, did Maria do something?
Stop it.
She did. And she'll listen to this and she'll call me out. She literally was like, did Maria do something? There's something different with her face. I'm like, I don't think she's had any work done.
Literally none. I would know of all people.
Yeah, no.
But that's crazy.
Not saying that at some point shit might not get real and I might not do something, but I am terrified to do anything like that.
But right now, if you actually see your face, you would know that it's fully natural. Like
Thank you,
living in
Scan.
LA, you become an expert on fillers. Like I can see it from a mile away. Like there's just none in your face.
Yeah, I don't know if I feel like I'm an expert. I feel like I know so much because I've interviewed so many people, but I'm still not super good at it unless it's super obvious.
Oh yeah, I think I can tell pretty well.
But anyway, I was like, I gotta tell everybody about snatching.
Yeah, that is cool.
And people refer to snatching in different things. So like,
With your wigs.
J-Lo's makeup artist. Why am I blanking on his name right now?
I don't know her.
Anyway, he'll do contouring. So like sometimes I look like I've had a nose job. I've actually seen people on before and afters think I've had nose jobs and stuff, and it's because of the way they're contouring. So if you have someone who really knows how to contour, they can shift everything
crazy.
and change everything so much. Like if you wear matte powder, your nose will look a little bigger. If you put a little shimmer here, like I always do, like it highlights and takes attention away in different ways. It's really cool what you can do with makeup.
It is. That's why they get paid a lot, because they're actual
But
artists.
look, Scam, ready? Look at my face now.
Okay.
Little droopy.
No, okay.
41 people. And then that's why when I do a
Yeah.
ponytail, people are like, oh my God, you look like you're 12. Well, look at
Yeah.
that. Don't I look 12 now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nuts. And so you don't think, though, after it affects your skin?
Yes, I'm terrified.
elasticity?
That's why I won't do it.
Yeah.
I let him do it that one time. He might have done it once before. Maybe that was just, he tried it. I don't like it because I don't want to get headaches. The last thing someone with a brain tumor needs are more headaches.
Totally. Makes sense.
But he wanted to do this really cool eye look, and so I let him do it and suffered for the cause. But yeah, I don't think it's a smart idea full time.
Just a little try here and
If
there.
you have a big event or, whatever.
Yeah.
You're going on a
that's
first date with
cool.
somebody.
Well, it's good to know.
Yeah. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to educate. But in the meantime, we're going to educate you on David Epstein's book, Range, Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. He's a New York Times bestselling author of another book called The Sports Gene. It's a fantastic book and a really important message for everybody, whether you're, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60. It's never too late to pivot. It's never too late to acquire new skills and hobbies and find a new career. And in fact, you'll get to hear that it's probably going to happen more than you think. So without further ado, here is David Epstein. Well, David, thank you so much for taking the time to do this.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I loved the book.
Oh, thanks. Really appreciate that.
Of course. It's funny because I grew up and I remember specifically a conversation that a woman had with me in church where she told me, you're all over the place. You need to just focus on one thing. But I really loved doing a lot of things. And then there was a moment where Katie Couric said it to a friend of mine. And she was like, she's doing so many different things. She needs to just focus on one thing. And then she thought about it for a second. And she took it back and she goes, actually, she's fine.
That's very self-aware.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
And so I really thought this was such an interesting subject. The book, of course, is called Range, Why Generalists Triumph in a Specialized World. And it's completely contrary to everything that we're told, everything that we're taught. And when you look at even your career, I mean, you were a senior writer at Sports Illustrated. You co-authored the story that revealed Yankees third baseman Alex Rodriguez had used steroids. You've done your TED Talks. You've got books. You've kind of gone all over the place as well. And so I feel like you've lived this.
Yeah.
And there was a moment where you felt like you were a job commitment phobe, as you say in the book. Talk about that and how you got to this place where you realized it was your strength.
Well, I was living in a tent in the Arctic as an ecology researcher when I decided for sure that I wanted to become a writer. So, I shifted pretty quickly. And when I started at Sports Illustrated, I started there as a temp fact checker, actually. And I thought when I left training as a scientist that, it was interesting, but that was behind me and had sort of been a waste, I guess. And once I got to SI, I realized that actually my science background, and I would say I was a rather ordinary scientist, my ordinary science skills suddenly in the context of a sports magazine made me completely extraordinary, right? Some people call this skill stacking, where you don't have to be the best at any particular thing, but if you sort of have these disparate experiences and skills and you arrange them in a way where you're unique in your workplace, and that's really what kind of took me from temp fact checker to the youngest senior writer at Sports Illustrated. And so I started to realize that it was some of the odd things in my background that actually were the strengths that set me apart, as long as I brought them somewhere where they weren't just totally typical. But it took me a while. It took me a while to come to that and be more comfortable changing jobs, even though, because I like doing that, right? I feel like if you want to sharpen your tools, you want to be doing different things and broadening your toolbox. But I never really thought about writing about it until, well, a few things happened. One, I had this public debate with Malcolm Gladwell about athletic development, and I knew he was going to argue for early specialization, and I looked at what science had to say, and it showed that, in fact, athletes who go on to become elite have what's called a sampling period, where they play these lots of different sports. They learn broad skills. They learn about their interests and abilities and delay specializing until later than their peers who plateau at lower levels. And I gave a talk about some of that research to a group of military veterans who'd been given scholarships for career changes by the Pat Tillman Foundation. And they immediately analogized it to their own experience, because they were all changing later than their peers. They were ex-special forces and military spouses and people who had done incredible things, and they were told that they were behind. And so it sort of brought my own story back to my mind. And I said, gosh, maybe sports is just the analogy here for other areas out in the world. And in fact, that turned out to be basically the structure of the book. So some of my own experience, but also realizing that a lot of other people were feeling really self-conscious about it, even though their diverse experiences can be a source of strength instead of a detriment.
Yeah, that Pat Tillman example that you're talking about, I love this part in the book where you say they brimmed with enthusiasm, but rippled with an undercurrent of fear. Their LinkedIn profiles didn't show the linear progression toward a particular career they had been told employers wanted. So they were anxious, of course, and somehow a unique advantage had morphed into their heads into a liability.
Yeah. I kind of wish LinkedIn had more space for people who have these broad beginnings to kind of write a narrative of how it's really one story of personal growth. Because now I've gotten more involved with the Pat Tillman Foundation every year, and now I'm on the final selection committee that decides who gets the scholarships. And the people who get it, they have these incredible stories. They oftentimes didn't go right into the military after high school. Sometimes they did, but often didn't. And they will have learned something out in the world that makes them feel like they should go to the military, and then they do that. And then in the military, they learn something they totally never expected, and it reorients their interests and their goals. And so they leave and start pursuing something new. And when they write about this path, you realize that their very unique goals and strengths came out of this kind of zigzagging and experiences that they kind of never expected. But when you just look at the resume, because that's actually what we look at first, it does look disjointed. But then when you see it in the context of this holistic story, it seems incredible, and they're incredibly unique and have all these unique skills. So I wish sort of we could have a version of LinkedIn that maybe caters more to generalists, where they can express their journey a little more so it doesn't look as disjointed.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why, but I just started thinking about the Patriots in my head. I'm a diehard Patriots fan. And when you think of what Coach Belichick has done with that team, he's taken people and made them play multiple positions. So they have strengths in that team that no other team that just focuses on those specialized positions has. And that's why I think one of the reasons that we've been such a successful force in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I think there are a number of reasons, but I think that's definitely one, right? It allows a much larger degree of flexibility than a lot of other teams have. And I think when, especially when it comes to the playoffs and the Super Bowl, you start to see the Patriots doing things that other teams don't. And part of the coin of the realm in those games is being able to do something surprising and new. And you have so much more opportunity to do that when you have people with this broader toolbox where they can occupy multiple positions.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I loved the it was right after the Pat Tillman thing here in the book, where you talk about, I dove into work showing that highly credentialed experts can become so narrow-minded that they actually get worse with experience, even while becoming more confident, which is a dangerous combination. Let's talk a little bit about how experience breeds confidence, but not skill.
Yeah, the first person who noticed that actually, well, not the first person, but the first person who was sort of doing serious research on this was a guy named Paul Meehl in the 50s, a psychologist who found that in all sorts of things like HR people picking someone for jobs, college admissions officers, this huge, huge array of professionals, as they would become more experienced, basically they would say that they were getting better and better at what they were doing, but their results showed that they were getting no better at predicting whatever it was they were trying to predict. And that work led to the work of one of the founders of behavioral economics, Daniel Kahneman, who studied cognitive bias and won the Nobel Prize for that. And in turn, I think led to a work of a scholar who I profile in the 10th chapter named Philip Tetlock, who basically wanted to put expert predictions to the test. So he had noticed in the 1980s when scholars were making predictions about the course of world events between the U.S. and the USSR mainly, that they would make very authoritative predictions based on whatever their sort of very narrow area of expertise was. And those predictions were often mutually exclusive, and yet they were both like sure that these things would happen. And so he decided to run a 20-year-long study of expert predictions. It had to be that long because you had to get these huge time courses of predictions so that you could separate luck and skill from just lucky and unlucky streaks from skill. 82,000 probability predictions in all. And what he found was that the narrowest specialists were basically the worst. Not only they would get some of these people who had spent their whole life studying one problem, they would start to see everything in the world through the lens of that single problem. And they knew so much about that one problem that they could always find enough information to fit their sort of preconceived lens. And it wasn't that they were useless. I mean, they gather useful information, but when it came to making these kinds of predictions, they actually started getting worse as they accumulated more credentials and more experience. So he calls them, in Tetlock's research, he talks about two types of forecasters, the foxes and the hedgehogs, based on this parable. The foxes know many small things, and the hedgehog knows one big thing. And the hedgehogs turned out to be the worst predictors and to get worse with experience and credentials, which is kind of scary.
Well, you were talking in the book at one point about the people that are so specialized and how we've gotten so super duper specialized that it's hurting us, whether it's cardiologists who are doing stints, right? Explain that to people, because it sounds unbelievable that someone who's super specialized in it would be a problem, but you illustrate it pretty clearly in the book.
Yeah, I mean, so cardiologists, and I should say, because this is controversial, of course. So stents are sort of metal tubes that basically pry open arteries when someone has a narrowed artery, and they will save people's lives if they are having a heart attack. But the problem has been they make a ton of sense for a whole lot of conditions, right? If somebody comes in with chest pain to see their cardiologist, and the cardiologist does imaging and sees they have a narrowed artery, they will put a stent in. And there are about a dozen randomized controlled trials now that show that while it does open the artery, it changes the person's chance of dying from heart attack or stroke not at all, not whatsoever. And also about 2% of people will suffer a serious complication or die. And even with more and more and more research showing that this does not work for those conditions, it continues to be done over and over and over. And if you look at the specialty journals, basically, those are the ones that resist these research findings, even though they're repeated over and over and over. And in fact, there are even some studies that look at the psychology of doctors who continue to do this. And what they will say is they just don't believe it. You can have like the highest level of evidence in science, randomized controlled trials. And if they're really specialized, they just don't believe it. And whether that's because they have a lot of incentive not to believe it, or just because it seems like it should work and they've done it so many times, it's a problem. I mean, there's some amazing findings in that field. Like one of the studies I profiled was meniscus surgery. So this is shaving, a piece of cartilage basically in your knee back to a crescent after it tears. It's one of the most common orthopedic surgeries in the world. And if you have knee pain and you go in, you get imaging, and you have a meniscus tear, the surgeon will fix it. But a group in Finland decided to do a trial of this where they gave some of the people, a control group got sham surgery, where they get an incision, the surgeons bang around like they're doing surgery, and they just sew them back up without doing anything, and those people performed just as well. And yet,
The placebo
this
effect.
procedure, and yet this procedure is done over and over and over and over because the people who specialize in it and do it multiple times a day just will not believe the research that it doesn't work, even though, it's solid research.
Well, it's funny. We had Joe Dispenza on the show and we learned all about the placebo effect with him. But the other thing that I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, is when they're so specialized, they actually prescribe these surgeries to people who don't even need it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, for sure. And I should say, as I mentioned in the book, specialization in medicine has been both inevitable and beneficial, but it's also come with these sort of perverse side effects. And based on that study of meniscus repair, these are all people who didn't have acute tears, like they weren't injured skiing or whatever. They just had tears and sort of growing knee pain. None of those people need it. Right. And the surgeons will say, but I've done it and I see the patients get better. And that's not a question because apparently they get better anyway, whether it's the physical therapy or whatever. But none of those people need it. And this surgery is done like millions of times a year.
It's crazy to me. I want to talk about the opening of the book. What a great way to start this book. Roger versus Tiger. And so you tell the tale of Roger Federer and Tiger Woods growing up and how they got into their specialized sports field. And they had completely different beginnings, similar endings, right? Being the top of their field. So when I'm reading it, and I want you to kind of give people the highlights of it, what I was left with was the question of what was it about Tiger? Like, did he just have a guidance toward his calling that maybe we don't all hear initially that was just so clear and evident? But back up and explain a little bit about the difference and how, I mean, that's the foundation of this entire book.
And so even if you don't know the details of Tiger's story, most people have probably sort of absorbed at least the gist where, when he was very physically precocious. When he was 7 months old, his father gave him a putter, not trying to turn him into a golfer, just as like a toy. And he carried it everywhere in his baby walker. 10 months, he could imitate a swing.
He
2 years,
balance on
you
the
can go
palm
see on
of his
YouTube. He's on
dad's
national
hand.
television.
Couldn't he balance on the palm of his dad's hand?
Yeah, there's a picture of it in Earl Woods' book when he's 6 months old. And you can go see on YouTube at 2 years old, he's showing off his golf swing in front of Bob Hope. At 3 years old, his father started media training him, basically, and teaching him how to play out of a sand twap, as Tiger said at the time. And, you fast forward to 21, he's the best golfer in the world. Roger Federer, on the other hand, he played basketball, soccer, badminton, swimming, skiing, wrestling, handball, volleyball, a few others I'm sure I'm forgetting. Of course, tennis. His mother was a tennis coach who she refused to coach him. Rugby was another one. Anyway, I won't try to list them all. And because he wouldn't return balls normally. When coaches tried to move him up a level with older boys, he declined because he just wanted to talk about pro wrestling with his friends after practice. And actually, when he got good enough to warrant an interview with a local reporter, the reporter asked if he ever became a pro, what would he buy with his first hypothetical paycheck? And Roger said a Mercedes. And his mother, who didn't want him focusing on sports or putting all his eggs in that basket, was appalled by this and asked the reporter if she could hear the interview tape. And he obliged. And it turned out Roger had said mehr CDs in Swiss German. He just wanted more CDs, not a Mercedes. His mother was okay with that. So this was like the diametric opposite of Tiger's past. So both these guys got to the top of their field, but by these incredibly disparate paths. And my question was, which one is the norm? And the research shows that it's the Roger path. But like you said, which I go on to the second part of your question was about whether Tiger just sort of found his calling early. And I think the answer is yes. In fact, I think there are two really important stories that we tell a little bit wrong. And that's Tiger's and Mozart. These are probably the two most famous stories of early development. And Tiger, in 2000, said, "My dad never once asked me to play golf. It was always me asking him. It's the child's desire to play, not the parent's desire to have them play, that matters." And so his father obviously facilitated a huge amount of practice, but initially reacted to Tiger's very unusual display of interest and prowess. Mozart, similar thing. So when I was researching the book, I found these letters where like a musician comes to Mozart's house when he's a kid to play with his father, and little Mozart wants to play with the group, and he says, "Let me play second violin." And his dad says, "You haven't had any lessons, so you can't possibly play, so go away." And Mozart starts crying, and this other musician says, "Well, I'll play with him in the next room so he doesn't cry." Next thing you know, they hear second violin coming from that room. So then the adults come in, and the letter says, and this part I remember verbatim, "Little Wolfgang was emboldened by our applause to insist that he could also play the first violin." And then he does that with made-up fingering because nobody's taught him. And then his father realizes he's got something very unusual on his hands and facilitates practice. So under any circumstances, it's very rare to have a Tiger or Mozart, but they weren't quite manufactured by their fathers the way we usually tell the story. Their fathers at first responded to their very unusual displays of interest and prowess. And so I think even if you want a Tiger or Mozart, and again, no matter what we do, those are very rare, the best way to give it the best chances is to expose the kid to a wide variety of things and see if something happens to light their fire that way.
Mm-hmm. As opposed to, was it the Polgari family?
The Polgars, yeah.
The Polgars, who just, in this book, were like, okay, we're going to have genius chess players and we're going to coach them and use them as an experiment.
Yeah, yeah. And they did turn out to be great chess players,
yeah.
No doubt about it. They turned out to be, one of them turned out to be, the one of the highest ranked. She was, I think, the first woman to be ranked in top 10 chess players in the world. But yeah, that was very different. And the real, so this opens the first chapter. And what the father in that family was trying to do really in train his daughters to be these chess prodigies was to show that you could do this in anything, right? Chess was just something he picked randomly. And as I make the argument in the book, that things like chess and golf actually turn out to be really bad models of most other things that people want to learn because they're based on repetitive movements and repetitive patterns. So like the reason chess is so easy to automate is because it's based on repetitive patterns. And you do have to specialize early in chess. If you haven't started studying patterns by the age of 12, your chances of becoming an international master drop from 1 in 4 to 1 in 55. Because the master's advantage is this pattern recognition. But again, that's why it's easy to automate. So most of us don't actually want to be in areas of work where early specialization works really well because it's the easiest to automate.
Yeah. Well, pattern recognition was something really interesting to me when I was reading this book because it just made so much sense. I'd never put it into words, but even, there are certain things that I feel like I innately know. And I start to attribute them to past lives. But as I think about it, maybe it is a collection of patterns that I'm familiar with. So I'm able to get there faster than other people who aren't familiar with those patterns. Yeah, no,
picking up, we all rely on some forms of pattern recognition that basically form our intuition, so that's probably what you're thinking of. I think an important thing to keep in mind with that is sometimes you will face situations that you haven't quite seen before. It might be a little different or work problems that you haven't seen. And in those situations, instead of relying on exact patterns you've seen before, what predicts your ability to be flexible with sort of the new patterns is how broad your training was. So there's this classic research finding that can be summarized as breadth of training predicts breadth of transfer. What psychologists mean by transfer is your ability to take knowledge and skills and apply them to problems that you've never quite seen. Something's a little different. And what predicts your ability to do that is how broad your training was before that point. And so kind of getting involved in a lot of the different things to help your intuition, like you mentioned you were when you were younger, I think is actually a strength, even though it might seem like at the time it's getting you behind.
So I guess what we're looking at here there are the few Beyoncés, the few Tiger Woods, the few who are just from go. They just are what they are. And then the rest of us are okay to find our way, basically.
Yeah, and that's pretty typical, right? So like I was at a Motley Fool event recently, the investing website and community, and they took something from the introduction of my book before the session, and they polled the audience on what do you think is the average age of a founder of a blockbuster startup on the day of founding. Now when it becomes a blockbuster, on the day of founding. And the choices were 25, 35, 45, 55. 25 was the overwhelming favorite. followed by 35, followed by 45, followed by 55. The answer, according to research from the Census Bureau and MIT, is 45 and a half. And so these were people who were very interested in investing and educated about investing and startups and all these things, and they were way off because, like those rare stories, like those exceptions, like the Tiger story, right? We hear the Tiger story, but not the Roger story. We hear the Mark Zuckerberg story, who obviously founded a Blockbuster startup when he was very young and said that young people are just smarter and all that when he was 22. But that is not the norm. We never hear the story of what is actually the norm. And it's that people actually usually have to do some zigzagging before they even figure out how and where to try to be entrepreneurs. And that's the norm. And I think it's harmful that we only focus on these few dramatic stories. And the reason we focus on them is because they're so rare, not because they're the norm.
This is a good point. So, David, how do we get past that, and how do we embrace that it's okay to not know where you're going yet? And that could be at any age, because somebody may fall into a job and then just stay there for, a host of different reasons, and still not know where they're going. And, you have parental pressure, you have societal pressure. How do you advise people to navigate this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the parental pressure, in some ways makes some sense, right? Because it's well-meaning. They want you to figure out what to do. But also, a lot of people's parents and grandparents, part of their career, if not most of it, was in a more industrial economy where specialization was the way to go, because you were facing repetitive tasks. Work next year was going to look like work last year. Organizations were highly specialized. Kind learning environment, again. Just by doing things in these like repetitive areas, you get better. Big barriers to lateral mobility. But with the knowledge economy, that kind of went out the window. And so now you have to sort of reinvent multiple times over your career. And so I think we should realize that this is coming from a well-meaning place, but it's not such good advice anymore. And I think the way to navigate modern work is to keep in mind what economists call match quality. So that is a term for the degree of fit between your abilities, your interests, and the work that you do. And it turns out to be incredibly important for your performance, your sense of fulfillment. And as one of the researchers, I profile, he likes to say, when you get fit, it'll look like grit, meaning that if you get someone in a situation with high match quality, they will display all the characteristics of grit, even if they didn't before, meaning, work ethic and resilience and all these things. And a lot of the generalists in the book didn't set out. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's so cool, actually. I've never thought about it in terms of match quality. Like, I look back at my life and I feel like there wasn't enough match quality. That's why there wasn't enough fulfillment at times, because I had so much more to give than I was being allowed to, or the job was enabling me to.
That's a great point. And so
Wow.
The way to sort of go about optimizing this match quality, I think, so many of the people I profile in the book, they didn't set out to say, I'm going to be a generalist. I mean, nobody really did. What they usually did was set out in search of match quality. And because they had to zigzag to find it, because, most people aren't like Tiger Woods where they find it right away, they end up with these broad experiences and these broad skills. And so I think the approach to take, it's like one of the studies in the book is called the Dark Horse Project by two researchers at Harvard looking at how people find fulfilling work. And they named it that because when they started bringing people in for their like introductory interviews, most of the people, not all, but the large majority would say, well, don't tell people to do what I did because I got lucky. I started in this one thing and then I switched and I had to bounce around a little bit until I found my thing. And so don't tell anybody to do what I did. And most of them said that. So they called it the Dark Horse Project because most of these people felt like they had come out of nowhere, like a dark horse. And the approach that these people took, I would say the most common thing to their approach to life and work was instead of saying, here's my ironclad goal in 10 or 20 years, I have to stick to this, they would say, here's who I am. They wouldn't look around and say, who's younger than me and has more than me. They'd say, here's who I am today. Here are my skills and interests. Here are the opportunities in front of me. I'm going to try this one, and maybe I'll change a year from now because I will have learned something about myself. And they do that zigzagging until they find a place where their match quality is much higher.
I love that. And I love the whole zigzagging idea. I think it's so important for people, especially now because everything's changing so quickly. And things are becoming automated and robots are taking jobs. And it's just things are changing fast. Even in the entertainment industry, it is so different than it was even 5 years ago.
Yeah.
So being able to pivot and reinvent and find something different. And also, I think, David, to realize that you've grown and you don't fit that mold anymore. You need that next level, right? Like you said, gone are the days where someone works at a company for 30, 40 years and, gets their retirement watch and whatever.
Right.
I think it's so important for us to realize that it's okay to shift and do all of that. So, yeah.
I mean, in fact, you get an interesting, I think an important point I want to make here, which is, in fact, if you want to maintain, fulfillment, you pretty much have to be switching for the most part because of how much our personality actually changes. So there's research that shows, again, this is just part of match quality, that you have higher income if your work fits with your personality traits, basically. Mm-hmm. But there's also something called the end of history illusion, which I write about in some more detail, which is this, in a nutshell, the psychological finding that we all view ourselves as having changed a lot in the past based on our experiences, but now we're finished. Like, we're not going to change much in the future. And we do that at every time point in life. We recognize we've changed a lot in the past and then underestimate how much we'll change in the future every time. Huh. And the fastest time point of change is 18 to your late 20s, when people are being told to figure out what to do. So that's like being told to, choose for a person you don't yet know in a world you can't yet possibly conceive. And so I think the odds aren't so good if you take the approach of just picking and sticking. But we should recognize that personality changes quite a bit over time. We underestimate the amount of personality change, so we should actually be attuned to the fact that we're probably not going to be fulfilled doing the same thing forever.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I remember when I was younger, you'd hear older women like, wait till you turn 40. You're not going to put up with shit anymore, or 50 or whatever the age was. And it's true. You change and your standards change and what you'll put up with changes as well. I mean, personality across the board. So if you had to guide somebody and explain to them, because at some point they're going to have a conversation with somebody and they're going to have to rationalize this to someone else that doesn't get this, hasn't read the book, isn't subscribing to this. Mm-hmm. What would be the main reasons you would tell them that generalists have an edge over specialists?
So I think it depends a little bit what area they're in. But for one, I think part of it is that breadth of training predicts breadth of transfer. You're going to, again, if you're in work these days that's based on being very repetitive, you're in trouble, because those are the things, again, that are most likely to be automated. So you need this broader flexibility and this broader adaptability. So I would try to put it in the context of the way that the work world is changing. I mean, here's an example you can give some of those people if they, that if they want to sort of help someone think about it in a concrete way. Like when the ATM came online, the prophecy was that, or the predictions were that all bank tellers would go away, job would be gone overnight. And what actually happened is, with more ATMs, there have become more bank tellers, because it makes each bank branch cheaper to run. And so banks open more branches, fewer tellers per branch, but more tellers overall. But it's completely changed the job from one of repetitive transactions to one of this much broader mix of skills that's marketing and customer service and all these other sorts of things. And that's what happens typically when technological disruption occurs, is that it doesn't eliminate the human jobs, but it changes them to something that requires this much broader mix of skills, because the specialized part, the repetitive part, is what's automated. And so I think if you want to be more ready for the modern work world, you really want this mix of skills, because you don't know exactly what the work world's going to look like a decade from now, but it will continue to shift to these sort of, broader sets of human skills. So I think it makes you less fragile in relation to the modern work world. And it also increases your chance of finding match quality if you're trying a bunch of different things. As Herminia Ibarra, a scholar whose work I love, who's in the book, says, we learn who we are. She studies career transitions, successful and unsuccessful. And what she says is, we learn who we are in practice, not in theory, which means there's like this, parents and some career gurus and personality tests that would have you believe that you can just introspect and know what you should do. Mm-hmm. But in fact, your insight into your interests and abilities and the work world, your opportunities, is constrained by your roster of previous experiences. So you have to do stuff in order to then find out and then reflect on it to find out where you fit. And so Herminia likes to say, act and then think. And you should take that approach early in your work life while you're sort of building diverse skills and trying to figure out where you fit.
So if you're in college and you're graduating, would a good first step be to write down your different personality, like your dominant personality traits and your dominant skills, or the list of your top 10 skills, let's say, so that you can use the match quality idea in terms of what you're going to look for a job?
I think you could, but I honestly think at that
love
point, at that point, you have so little insight into the work world or and relatively little into yourself in a lot of ways, I think, although you'll know some of your talents by then, that I would almost say whatever you're thinking about trying after college is going to, give you some signal. I mean, for me, like starting down the road to training as a scientist, I thought I was going to learn that I loved it and that's what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Instead, I learned that maybe it wasn't the best fit for me. But that was a really important lesson to learn. So I think there's actually a statistician who modeled the best way to go about doing this. And I mentioned some of his work in Range, where what he suggests you do is aim of anything that you're interested in doing, try like the highest risk careers first, because you get a much faster signal about how it fits you and what the work is like than you do from more normal work, right? So say, you're going to be, in accountant or something like that, which is totally cool, but you don't get as much signal about that career trajectory as you do if you jump in and try to be like a musician, right? You'll get much more signal from that, or a professional athlete. And so he suggests that this adage of young and dumb is actually and he makes a mathematical model showing this is actually the ideal way to go about sampling jobs. So I would say don't go for, don't over prioritize stability right out of the gate if you don't have to. Go for these things where you get sort of a high signal of your own abilities, and then work from there.
If you were to do it all over again, what would you do differently?
Gosh, what would I do differently? That is such an interesting question. Boy, because I'm so like instinctively saying like, I wouldn't do anything differently. But of course there were lots of times. I mean, I think I would have, in my journalistic career, I think I would have spent a little bit more time working at smaller publications so that you can make your sort of early mistakes at a smaller stage.
Yeah.
I think that's something I would have done. But honestly, even though I switched out of science, I might have stayed in a little bit longer because I realized those were sort of the best skills for my journalism career, was a lot of the ways of thinking and the skills that I learned when I was in scientific training. I think I would have continued taking some more statistics, because you can. So when I was at Sports Illustrated and college students would ask me, who wanted to work at Sports Illustrated or ESPN or wherever, what should I do if I want to work in that field? Should I major? The typical question was, should I major in journalism or English? And my first instinct was to say journalism, and my second instinct was to say English, and my third was to say, I have no idea. I studied geology and astronomy, but a statistics course never hurt anybody. And I believe that, like, having taken some college level statistics has been the one thing that I've applied across every single job that I've had. And I think it's more important than ever in the modern world to at least understand kind of some statistical and probabilistic thinking. It won't lead you wrong no matter what your job is.
Yeah. I guess also I remember reading in the book, even that the Nobel laureates had so many different hobbies. So would you suggest people, and I want you to explain what that kind of indicates for them, but I feel like as I look back, I did a little bit of everything, and it's helped me immensely in my career and being able to be so diverse. And so I guess, I think it's another important thing to teach people is, like, through experience, you're going to have that signal as well. And it can be volunteering, interning, but getting your hands in as many things as fast as you can in your life so that you can be building that toolkit. You never know when the statistics class is going to come out and be helpful, or the science background. When I see your TED Talks, it's all statistics and comparisons and things. So
yeah, no, in fact, in order to force myself to do some of what you're talking about, I started this thing I call my little book of experiments, where on a monthly basis, I have to like put a hypothesis in that's, an interest I want to explore a little bit, or a skill I might want to work on. And I forced myself to make an entry every month so that I'm trying something, whether that's, an online class. I took an online fiction writing class for one of my experiments, and it turned out to be like a revelation for my writing, or learning about some field of work that I don't know about by going and finding someone and talking to them. And then I go back to my little book of experiments and, I write about what I learned. And so that's a way that I like force myself to keep doing some of these things. But I think you're completely right. And the finding you were alluding to about Nobel laureates was, so scientists in general are about as likely as the general public to have serious hobbies outside of work, but nationally recognized scientists are much more likely, and Nobel laureates are way more likely. They're about 22 times as likely to have a serious hobby, often aesthetic, music, painting, but not always, woodworking, glass blowing, magic, all these sorts of things. And those things can seem like a distraction, but it turns out, and there are a number of people who study creativity, that those often feed the insights that these scientists have that set them apart. So one of my favorite quotes in the book is from Santiago Ramon y Cajal, a Spanish Nobel laureate who's best known as the father of modern neuroscience. And he noticed this among these sort of creative innovators, that they'd have all these hobbies. And his quote was, "To him who observes them from afar, it looks as though they are dissipating their energies, when in fact they are channeling and strengthening them."
Yes.
And so he sort of recognized this strength in diversity.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. I had brain surgery 2 years ago, and ever since I've done the things that I never got to do before. I've taken up hobbies. And so I took up guitar and dancing and now piano and all the things I've always wanted to do. And for a moment, my husband was thinking that I was, losing it a little, but also wasting a lot of time. But it feeds you in such a way. And truthfully, especially if you're a scientist, it's building new neural pathways. So they're only getting smarter and better anyway with these different creative hobbies.
Yeah, I mean, according to the sort of strict 10,000 hours school of thought, then something that they're doing away from their main pursuit is, should be considered basically a waste of time when they're not racking up those hours. And I think they would probably beg to differ. Yeah.
So what do you tell people about the 10,000 hour rule?
Gosh, it depends what they think about it in the first place, because I've noticed that what people think it means depends where they read about it. So the actual original sort of paper that spawned the 10,000 hour rule was done by a psychologist at Florida State, and it was done on the study was of 30 violinists, so it was a pretty small study, who were already in a world famous music academy, and the 10 best had 10,000 hours of so-called deliberate practice, like technical practice, on average by the age of 20. And first I like to tell them that was an average. And in fact, nobody had 10,000 hours. Some of them went over it and a lot were under, and that was just an average. And averages are not a good way to think about yourself, because like if we look at it, it takes 11,053 hours on average to become an international master in chess. But some people do it in 3,000 hours, and some people are still being tracked at 25,000 hours and they still haven't made it. So again, the match quality makes a lot of difference, and the 11,053 hour rule doesn't actually tell you anything about the reality of human skill acquisition and development of expertise. So I think that's one of the first problems I really like to highlight, and then to sort of go on to say that there is no science that said there ever really was a 10,000 hour rule. So the problem I think about it is that, one, it leads people to want to engage in early hyper-specialization, which is contrary to what the research says you should do in most but not all fields. And I think it leads them to not search for match quality, because there's this idea embedded in it called the monotonic benefits assumption, that means every person will get the exact same amount of benefit from the exact same amount of training. And we know that's not true. That's not true in any scientific research of skill acquisition at all. And so I think that rule suggests to people that you don't have to try to be attuned to your interests and talents. You just have to pick anything and do it. And that's just not true.
If you had to guide parents who are listening to this on how to kind of pivot from what they have been doing to, let's say they're listening to this and they've had an epiphany, or they want to, go down this path, what would be your best advice for them?
Yeah, and I'm a new parent, so I think about this a lot. Sometimes it's hard to give advice because sometimes they're forced to do things that maybe aren't the best, even if they want to do better, right? I lived in Brooklyn until recently, and there was a U7 travel soccer team that met at a field near me. I don't think there's a human being on earth who thinks 6-year-olds can't find good enough competition in a city of 9 million people that they have to travel, okay? But the parents are being forced into that, right? Because they say, well, if you're not on this team, you can't be the next one and all those things. So I understand those pressures. But the approach here's how I think about the approach I'm going to take, and maybe that's the best advice I can give. There's something I write about in Range that the Army developed when they were having trouble retaining their highest potential officers. First, they threw money at those people, and that didn't work. The ones who were going to stay anyway took it, and the ones who were going to leave left, and that was $500 million of taxpayer money down the drain. Then they started programs like this one called talent-based branching, where instead of saying to these people they had identified as very high potential, instead of saying, here's your career path, go up or out, as they had in the industrial economy, and it worked fine, they say, we're going to pair you with a coach and try this career path, and then reflect on how it fits you with your coach, then try this other one and this other one and these other two, and keep reflecting on how it fits you with your coach, and we'll help triangulate a good fit for you. And as a parent, I see my role as akin to that coach in the talent-based branching process, which led to much better retention for the Army, where my goal is to facilitate a wide array of opportunities, and then to make sure my kid gets the most possible self-learning signal from each one of those opportunities going forward. So I think of my role as the coach in the talent-based branching process.
Very cool. David, this has been such a cool conversation and so important, so needed for people. And I love it. I want to ask you, we ask everybody before we end the show, because it's called Better Together, how you are getting better each day in your life, whether it's in health or wellness or in any area.
Yeah, there are two things. So in health and wellness, I was a national level runner at one point, and now I'm definitely not. But and there was a time where I thought I have to have this big, I have to be wearing my running clothes and have this big time blocked off to do my workouts, or else it doesn't count. And I'm totally on the other end now, where like I'll use anything to get a workout. Like I can do intervals in a hotel room, whatever, body weight stuff. There's tons of stuff on YouTube. And so I've now come around to like, I can work out no matter where I am, basically. And I think that mindset shift of saying you can do something wherever you are, instead of having to block off time and like be at the gym and do it all officially, has really been a good leap in health for me. And right now also I'm taking another fiction writing course, because I took one for one of my little book of experiments and found it had a really good impact on my writing and reminded me of some of the things I love about writing. And I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would. And so I'm doing another one right now.
That's so cool. You do it online?
Yep. I mean, you could do it. I think you could do it anyway, but that's just, there's so much stuff online, both paid and free courses. There's so much stuff available. Like you can investigate interest. You don't have to feel any need to finish a course. You can just dip in and see what's interesting.
I know. I think we all forget that. It's such a great thing to mention. I did one Friday night total like lame. I'm in my office at home, and I started looking into speed reading. And I spent the night doing this like mini introduction course, and I just thought it was so cool. There's so many things out there that we're not really taking advantage of. So any free moment you have, just get on Google and start searching some of these courses.
Yeah, and if you set aside like a little time, I also try to, when I am deeply researching a certain topic, I still try to read something outside of that topic every day. And that doesn't have to be long. It could be 5 minutes, could be 15 minutes, but that's, or when I go to I like, the internet's wonderful and recommendations, algorithms are often great, but I've noticed that in that reading, I can't always rely on recommendations algorithms. So I'll go to I have this practice of going to a library or bookstore and making sure to leave with something I didn't intend to get on the way in, because those are kind of places where I find interest that I didn't know I had, and then to have to feel like I have to get outside the recommendations algorithms to do that sometimes.
That's so cool. Well, David, thank you so much. This has been such a great convo, and thank you for the book. I really loved it, and I know our audience is going to love it as well. And if you're ever in LA, you'll have to pop by our studios.
Fantastic. Would love to.
Awesome. All right. What did we learn, people?
That I'm not a failure because I've tried so many things. I actually makes complete sense that I have the information to realize the pieces that I was putting together, like why I would be able to talk about certain things in a way someone else wouldn't, and I would pick up tasks that someone else couldn't, is because I've done so many things along the way. And it was so funny because I just talked to Ashley, Maria's old producer, last weekend, and she was talking about her new job, and she's like, I can literally do everything. And it's because like what we do here at AfterBuzz and with you, like in the same way you do your own work, we do everything.
Yeah.
So it's really cool knowing that you're not limiting yourself. You're actually expanding yourself depending on what you want to do, which he was basically saying most jobs almost require that. Like you have the edge over it.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah, anybody who's ever worked for me, because I do so many different things, I've always said, you are going to learn so much and you're going to get to touch so many different fields, and it's going to be so helpful for you later. You're going to be such a ninja because you're going to be able to do all these different things and bring all of that to wherever you go.
Mm-hmm.
So, Stephen, I have a feeling this was a definite interesting topic for you.
I mean, it was interesting for me. It definitely reaffirmed my decision to not go to college. I think that a lot of people, like, even in this, he's talking about, like, expanding the things and finding the things that you connect with. What are the matches? And a lot of people decide to go $100,000 in debt on something that they don't even know if it's a good match or not, because they're going into a career path they've never experienced any aspect of. For me, I tried to do business. Then I tried to do real estate, and then I moved out to Los Angeles for acting, and then finally ended up producing videos, and then ending up with you guys. And it's been cool because even if there's aspects of my job that I don't match with too greatly, there's other aspects that I do, and I really like that variety because I have so many different skill sets from working at this company that, every day I find something new that I do match with,
So cool. What was the decision behind the decision not to go to college? I didn't realize you didn't go to college. Now I understand so much more about you. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
So it was a failure of my school counselor.
What? You're
yeah.
blaming somebody else?
Well,
Oh no, Stephen, we can't start there.
Oh my gosh. But he was 17.
no. So my school counselor, I graduated high school thinking everything was all set, and then I graduated, met with them, and they said, well, actually, before you can attend the university that you've been accepted into already, you have to get one more math credit. But if I had waited, my counselor didn't advise me to wait and take summer school. They said, oh, you're good to graduate. So I graduated, but then to have gone to the university, I would have needed to take summer school through my high school. But because I graduated, I couldn't and needed to go to a technical college for 2 years just to attend a university.
What?
Wait, hold on.
Yeah.
Stephen, I went to high school, okay? I know it was a long time ago. I went to high school. It wasn't about credits. You go to 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade. You take the classes you're supposed to take. How did you end up not taking a class that you needed?
Because I took geometry twice.
Why?
So, because I failed the first time.
Why? I'm
Because of the
kidding. I'm
stomach-
kidding.
yeah,
I'm
right.
kidding. Go ahead.
But the issue is you meet with your counselor in your senior year to make sure that you're getting all the classes you need and you're all set to go, correct?
Yeah.
So I did that. We were all set to go, passed my classes senior year, got accepted into university, and after graduating, the university said, you're missing a math credit. I go to my counselor to be like, hey, can I take this in summer school? They say, no, because you have your diploma, you can no longer take classes at this high school. You have to go to a Wake Technical College for 2 years to...
2 years for one math class?
Yep.
There's no way.
Wow.
Hey, I mean, this
Stephen,
is Wake County Schools.
That's a block. There's
Wake
no
County
way. That's a
schools.
Stephen block that got stuck in your head back then.
I will say though, Stephen, I'm so surprised he didn't go to college, but it really isn't for everyone.
Yeah.
I've noticed he knows so much.
He's wicked smart.
like so much shit. And things I'm like, okay, I know way more than him. He'll like either be up to par or know more than me. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, when did
Steven,
this happen?
any rebuttals to scam just thinking she's so much better than you?
Only on some things, and I get real surprised because he has such a wide amount of knowledge on things.
I tend to just let Steph win arguments sometimes.
Oh my god.
Okay.
Never would you.
I think it was for the best. I shouldn't have gone to university. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and it would have put me in so much debt for something that I wasn't sure about.
Yeah.
And what I'm really happy about is, you know, I was going to go into the military. I was set for Marine Corps. I lost 80 pounds getting ready to go to Marine Corps. And my grandfather sat me down. This is like the last year he was alive. He sat me down and says, Steven, you're going to succeed at whatever you do at. But you have a problem with authority. And if you look at all of your history in high school and all of your history in schooling, just know that that is something you've dealt with before. If you're going to go into the Marine Corps, that's all your life will be for 4 years. So I was like,
Were you aware of the issue before he brought it up and verbalized it like that?
I was aware of it, but I didn't really connect like government to public schools. But then it kind of made sense and it clicked, and I was like, yeah, probably not the best.
Oh my God, I learned so much about you each week.
Hopefully for the better.
Now it makes sense. Can you imagine this would be Steven in the military? He'd be like, no, that doesn't work. No, we can't do that. Nope. And they'd be like, do the fucking push-ups, Steven. Be like, no, but I did them already. Or like, whatever. You would have been so combative with them.
I'd be like, I found a better way to do push-ups.
Yeah.
I found a better way to move my body 6 inches off the ground.
Or like, yeah, they would tell you to do something and you do the Stephen Lemieux stare. I always am looking at him like, Steven, did I say something in Japanese or something? Like, what's going on here? Like, what?
You know what that is, Maria, right?
What?
And I actually got called out on this in high school. I was marching winter drumline, and they told me you need to take bigger steps to get to the mark. And I just looked at him, and in my mind, it's like 1,000 thoughts. Like, how do I do this? How do I do this? I gotta figure out how to do it. And he looks at me and is like, you look like it's just pissed in your Cheerios. Get over there and do it. And it's like every time I have to work on my resting
Bitch face.
Bitch
Your resting,
thinking face.
listening face.
Because it's like when you say something, it just shoots through my mind, and I'm trying to like process it and be like, okay, how do I do this better? How do I actually get it done? And it's this dead stare.
No, because this morning something happened. So he's going into bathroom A and I'm going into bathroom B. And I said something simple like, I can't remember what it was. Like, let's do the mic check or something. And he's looking at me like I'm speaking Greek to him. And like it's requiring a lot of thought. I'm like, no, Steven, just do the mic check. Like it's not a big deal. Like where is the confusion or processing or question for? Like it could be something so simple and you're just like
The mic check isn't a high match with my consciousness.
oh, perfect. Okay, all right. I see.
David Epstein says that I should avoid mic checks. Some people are born to be great at mic checks. I was not one.
That was not on your skill list. Okay, all right. Noted for the future.
No,
in the meantime, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode with David Epstein as much as we did. Thank you for listening to Better Together and supporting us. We ask that you help us by rating, commenting, subscribing on iTunes or Spotify. And be sure to tell your friends. If you love an episode, share it with your friends via email, via social media. It always lights us up when we see you guys communicating it with people and helping to bring more people to the show. I know we broke 500 comments, which was a big deal. We were very excited about that.
The reviews, yeah.
The reviews are in.
Oh, boy. Here comes the voice.
Here comes the voice. Bree1214 says she absolutely loves this podcast, especially that it drops on Mondays. It gives me a positive mindset to start my week right. Plus, it's a great reminder to take care of myself both mentally and physically. I love the guest Marie interviews and all the takes on life. It's really helped me shape new perspectives. Plus, anecdotes at the beginning are always great. Definitely worth listening to.
Bree might like the snatching.
Right?
Yeah.
Might love it.
Can I kill the voice? Because you're killing these beautiful people's messages.
Thank you, Maria N.T. Okay, I'm just going to kill the voice.
Yeah.
Lindsay Eve says, I've always liked Maria as a host, etc., but listening to this podcast has truly made me see her in a new light. She's inspiring, confident, and self-assured, yet selfless. I can tell her heart is in this, and sharing knowledge and truth about so many amazing topics to help people lead a more fulfilling life is her purpose. I'm obsessed and uplifted. Smiley emoji. I just want to hug you.
Obsessed and uplifted.
I want to hug you too. Thank you. It is my passion, and it does make me feel so happy to get to do this every week. It really, like, it just lights me up so much. I look forward to learning and reading all these cool books and getting to hear these great people and shaping all of our lives together. It's amazing.
It is.
Here's another one from R. Palmer 209 who says, as a young adult, this podcast is life-changing. I found your podcast after listening to an interview that an acquaintance from my hometown, Rebecca Flores, did with you overcoming setbacks during SXSW in Austin,
South by Southwest.
South by Southwest in Austin, Texas earlier this year. I find so much joy and feel like my faith is restored in the world when I'm listening to you, your team, and your amazing guests. You are all truly changing how I think and who I am becoming as a person. I am in my mid-20s, so life can feel a little lost and worrisome at times. Plus, in an age where there is so much information at your fingertips, we are exposed to more negative things more often. But on the flip side, there are people like you all that truly shine so brightly and have a bigger and better way to share the good things. It's contagious. Just know that you're changing not only my life, but the people around me too, with the ideas, thoughts, and perspectives you share each week. Thanks for following your purpose. It's helping me find mine.
Wow. I read this one twice on the drive to Vegas.
So cool.
I was like, oh my God. I mean, for you guys, like, what does it feel like to know that somebody's saying that what you're doing is helping changing people's lives?
Find their purpose. It's really rewarding.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, all I ever wanted to do in the world was like support people in whatever way I could. So being a part of something that can give positive knowledge and people to their lives is so cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty dope.
It is pretty dope. Well, thanks, guys, for joining us. We'll have another amazing show for you guys next week. Until then, you can follow us. Oh, actually, until then, if you want to learn more about David Epstein and you want to purchase his book, Range, you can go to davidepstein.com or buy it wherever books are sold. And I think it's a great gift for young people in your life and
I agree.
old, but definitely people who are trying to find their way. In the meantime, you can follow us at Maria Menounos, at David Epstein, at Steph Sabra, at Stephen Lemieux Photo. And remember, be nice people, make good choices, and be present.